I think we've come to what I believe is the oldest part of our churchyard. We've got this, which we can assume dates from probably the 15th century. There is some evidence that there was a rebuilding of the tower in 1400 and something.
That's
then,
possibly.
Then there was the major rebuilding of the church in 1533.
Yeah.
And of course, we've always had alterations in the church, haven't we? And if we look round, we can see
all sorts of evidence. We can see how the small church, founded here before the year 1122 to serve the young settlement of Burnley, has grown to the splendid building of today. But in November 1988, the building was found to be unsafe and needed urgent attention if it was to be saved. First, the building was encased in scaffolding to hold it in position. The north side was buttressed with scaffolding and concrete, while the architects decided the best way to stabilise the building. My grandfather built this porch.
Well, this porch, yes, which was put there by public subscription,
Possibly.
because they paid for it to keep themselves out of the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know my father tells me that, or he did tell me before he died, that when his grandfather was putting this on, they did have a little argument with either the church authorities or the architect or whoever it was about the foundations. Because there were vaults and gravestones underneath here, and they wanted to dig down and put the foundations through them, but they wouldn't let them. And it was bridged over the vaults. And because of that, we see that this whole porch has leant forward. A strong metal frame was constructed above the nave to stabilise the main structure. The many ancient vaults under the aisles weakened the foundations. They were filled with concrete to give a strong foundation. Some had lain undisturbed since medieval times.
This morning we found like just bones. There's nothing. There's only one to come out today, and then we have to wait now till they get us, phone us back to if they come across anything else.
Yeah. And what do you do with the bones then? Do you bag them?
Yeah, they're all bagged up and ready to go back in.
Yeah.
When they put the concrete in, they go back in the same tomb at the sides.
Right. So they're all, none of the bones or anything goes outside the church? No.
Only the lead lining of this coffin remains. The gravestone is dated 1707. By September 1990, the work was going well and the building was saved. Then one night there was a disastrous fire. When the fire brigade arrived, the roof was already alight, but the damage was restricted to the baptistery and west end of the nave roof. The following morning, the fire, smoke and water had left a scene of devastation. After the first dismay, the parish set about the task again. The insurers assessed the damage and new plans were made. Under a large plastic canopy, the nave roof had to be rebuilt. Some of the old English oak timbers dating from the 16th century were sandblasted and reused. Many had to be replaced. New panelling had to be made. New gutters are being made. Because of the number of vaults which were found, the base of each pillar had to be strengthened. Floor was reconstructed and a precast beam system used, filled in with insulating blocks. An efficient underfloor heating system was installed before the floor was tiled. This is the view from above the chancel at this stage of the work. The old heating pipes were removed. The west wall was stabilised by pouring epoxy resin into the cavity. The west window was so badly burned that the stonework had to be replaced. Each piece was masoned to be an exact copy of the old moulding and fitted exactly as it was before the fire. The old pews, which had not been burnt, were repaired and sold for garden furniture. At last, the roof was almost complete. smoke had damaged the organ, which had to be cleaned and renovated.
Well, it's nice to have a record in any case.
Yeah. Are these reeds? Are these so old?
These are the Passaun, which is the really heavy stuff on the 8-foot Passaun.
Yeah.
On the organ, it's the one gives the more piercing stuff.
It was a rare opportunity to see the inner workings of the organ. At last the contractors had done their work. Willing church members spent many hours cleaning and polishing so that everything would be perfect for the reopening. The new west window was designed by Ray Nichols and shows the church surrounded by fire but not destroyed. The old pews were changed for comfortable chairs to enable the seating arrangement to be flexible for different uses by various groups in the future.
We hope that what we've done now will last us a while.
Well, it'll certainly last our time.
Well, I would have thought...
We hope it'll last longer.
We hope that
It should be stabilised.
Stabilise the building for at least another 150 years.
Yes.
I hope so.
Yes.
Stephen Barrett's photo of the church, which was used on the cover of the Restoration Appeal booklet. About £1 million was needed and was only reached through the hard work and generous support of many individuals and organisations. St Peter's congregation manned a display and stall at Townley when the May Fair was held there. It attracted valuable publicity. Regular features about the restoration appeared in the Burnley Express. The people of Burnley showed great interest in the church, which had been at the centre of their town's history, and wanted to help in its restoration.
I'm frightened of it popping. Would you like a balloon? Whoops, somebody lost his balloon.
While the church was being restored, a full programme of services continued in the school hall.
First of all, a warm welcome to everybody this evening to our 9 lessons of carols. throne of heaven, the words that Christ himself hath taught us, saying together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. God's mercy and grace remain with us ever. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much for that.
At last, 1,471 days after it had been closed, St. Peter's Church was reopened.
We meet today to thank Almighty God for the life of the church in this town and for the generosity which encouraged us to take up the task of restoration. We look back on two devastating days, the 11th of January 1989, when we discovered severe structural weakness, and the 14th of December 1991, when the building was ravaged by fire. But today we mark another date. It's reopening to the glory and service of God on the 29th of November 1992. We declare it our hope that it may be widely used by our community and that it may continue to be a house of prayer for all peoples. May I thank you all for coming this afternoon. Particularly people who have come from a long distance, and there are some of our members or ex-members who have really travelled to come here today. I particularly appreciate the presence of my colleagues in the Ministry of the Gospel to support us on this occasion, and the presence of the Lord Lieutenant, His Worship the Mayor, to represent the county and the borough of Burnley, of which we feel we are very much part. I've always been a keen team sportsman, and I've known those times when you've crawled off the pitch, weary but elated, and you've said to each other, well, we've done it. And today, that feeling is experienced by quite a number of people here, those who are the congregation of St. Peter's Church, who nearly 4 years ago were sent abruptly out of this building, and who since that time in exile have laboured and longed for the time when they could be back. And they are the real heroes today, and everybody else who supported everything that we've done in our appeal has really been supporting them in their efforts. And so you've already clapped the children and the mass players. This, I think, may be the third time and the last time where we do that this afternoon. I would like to ask you to clap the congregation, and can they clap themselves in the true Russian manner, please? Now, I understand that the Civic Society of Burnley wish to make a presentation at this service, so Mr. Millard, would you like to come forward, please, wherever you are? Thank you.
Majesty's Lord Lieutenant, Mr Mayor, Madam Mayoress, my Lord Bishops, Reverend Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. As Chairman of the Burnley District Civic Trust, it is indeed a great pleasure to be able to award this premier award to St Peter's for the excellent refurbishment of this historic landmark. And the plaque, by the way, is one of a number that were made by the boys of Barnes School at Burnley, and it's made from parts of an old beam, which has a strong link with the heritage of Burnley in the textile industry. And realising and appreciating the importance of heritage and environmental grounds of St Peter's, the Trust felt very eager to support the appeal and refurbishment, which at one time some of us thought was a little bit past redemption. We thought it wasn't possible, but however, you have made an excellent job. And realising that the building is going to be used as a multi-purpose building, we hope it will be used for secular as well as religious purposes, the Trust did feel able to support the appeal financially, and we hope that our contribution has helped a lot. So, in presenting this to you, David, we do hope that the building will be used for community use in an area where the town itself began. The community began around 1,000 years ago, and we're very pleased to present this back.
I don't think it's a medal. You'll find somewhere very suitable to put it, and may I thank the Civic Trust. It is very much appreciated because we have certainly felt at St Peter's that we were part of the heritage of the town, and that's been very much in our thoughts as we try to restore this building. Great fire, our font, put here in 1532, was destroyed. Font saved from a closed church in the Diocese of Lincoln has now replaced it. I invite the Bishop of Burnley to be dedicated for our use in Burnley. Will you stand?
Father, we thank you that through the waters of baptism, we die to sin and are made new in Christ. Grant through your Spirit that those baptized here may enjoy the liberty and splendor of the children of God. There is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all. We dedicate this font in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
It is now my pleasure to invite representatives of those who have laboured to restore the Church of St Peter to present to the Bishop of Blackburn tokens of their trade and symbols of the offering of all that has been done by architect, structural engineer, main contractor and subcontractors to rescue and restore the structure and fabric of this ancient building. The congregation of this church have waited for this moment for nearly 4 years. I now invite you to rehallow this ancient building to the glory of God and the service of the community.
Peace be to this house and all who enter here, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Well, it's nice to have you here this morning for this splendid occasion. As you'll all know, when we restored the church, we had to find a new font, and we went to Lincolnshire. We had a very interesting journey to Lincolnshire, and in an old church which had become redundant, we found this font, which we thought would go very well from the stone and the general shape in our building, and we set it here, and then of course we realised it hadn't got a lid. And we thought we'd have to live with this. And then came the suggestion that it could be made for us. And so this morning I'm absolutely delighted with what's actually arrived. And I want to thank you very much for all the work you've both put into this. It's a marvellous example of English craftsmanship, which I hope will grace St. Peter's Church for many, 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 many years. And people will look at that and say, well, isn't it marvellous having got a new font with a lid complete, and they won't realise that we've actually had it made and fitted so well. So thank you very much indeed.
As it had been for more than 9 centuries, St. Peter's Church was ready to take its place proudly at the centre of the life of Burnley.
The Mayor of Burnley calls upon the townspeople to accompany him to the Church of St. Peter to celebrate the 700th anniversary of the granting of the Market Charter.
On their way into the churchyard, the procession passes the very spot which was the marketplace and the centre of the town for more than 600 years. The following summer, the reopening was celebrated with a flower festival created by the Burnley Flower Club and the Church Flower Guild. It was entitled The Church in the Community. Local industries and activities were represented, and the festival was sponsored generously by Burnley firms.
This is a rather special spot. It's the rector's stall in St. Peter's Church, and it's special because many, many hundreds of years ago, this was where Burnley started, in a little clearing by the River Brun. It was only a very small place, and the first people were Anglian settlers. And when they built their huts, they also started a Christian church. It may just have been a preaching cross to begin with, but sooner or later they put up a building, and it developed into the building that I'm sitting in just now. It was about 6 years ago now, January 6 years ago in 1989, that this church had to be closed. And I think it was one of the worst few moments of my life when I had to declare that the church was closed because it was unsafe. Then after a great deal of work, we were getting ready to reopen it when we had a disastrous fire. And that was another of the worst moments of my life, when I came down here in the early morning, saw the fire blazing away through the roof of the church. But now all that is in the past. We've been back in the church now for 2 years. People in the church just now are having coffee after our morning service, and the church is well used by different community groups. The town of Burnley, now a very large town, much bigger than the first settlers, has moved away from this part of the town, but we're trying to bring the community back in many different ways, and we have an events committee. We have all sorts of ways of letting the church out to bodies who want to use this magnificent building, and we're looking to see that it's established now as we look forward into the future. So a church that's built, lost in the mist of time, is now looking forward to a glorious future.
Hello, my name is David Smith and I'm the Secretary of St. Peter's Church here in Burnley. You can imagine that when the church was closed due to the structural problems, we were all devastated. When we had time to sit back and review the situation, it seemed to us that there were several courses of action open to us. Either we could arrange for the total demolition of the church, or if we were lucky, we could arrange for the church to be handed over to the redundant churches committee, in which case, or in each of these cases, it would have been necessary to have built probably a small church somewhere within the churchyard. The only remaining alternative was to restore the church, and it was that route which we decided to take. It was taken with some misgiving because we were, of course, entirely unhappy about the figures, and we had no idea where all the money would come from. However, we did proceed in that way, and as you can see, the church has now been beautifully restored. We believe that decision and the subsequent restoration of the church was the work of the Holy Spirit.
The traffic of the town rushes by St. Peter's, and we have seen the church rise again after the disasters. It is now restored to its original dignity and is part of a society which has changed immensely. We are trying to meet the needs of the people, our efforts being focused on sharing the faith with those who don't know it or have forgotten it.
I've got some shots of me filming.
Yes. Right.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Look, has Jenna got tea without milk? Because I don't see them. These are all, look, tea to me, from the set before, all fall apart. They're just salad and egg, I don't know anything. And I didn't put mayonnaise on because I didn't want the people to pick 2 or 3 together because they'll all...
You're on food.
Smells for the camp.
Thank you.
Any funny bits are going on, you've been framed. I'm waiting to win.
Would you like me to fall on the floor? There's a fortune in it.
Yes,
Shall I
please.
pretend